Hello and welcome to episode 56 of Just Keep Writing, a podcast for writers, by writers, to keep you writing. I'm Marshall.
And I'm Brent.
And with us this week is Nia Davenport. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I know we've had some tech issues before this, so thanks for hanging in there, and I'm glad we're doing this right now. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Not a problem. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and this is going to be interesting for people that have been listening to this show for a while because there are two people noticeably missing here. Will and Nick, who are a staple of the show, obviously, if you've been listening. But it's just me, Brent, and Nia this week. And this particular show is, I don't want to say a spinoff, but it's a version of the show that we're going to do periodically. And really, it's going to be kind of centering around Black writers. And so we're kind of calling this Just Keep Writing While Black, which is kind of the tentative thing right now. So we're having fun with it. So we're hoping that this is something we can do periodically and really focus on, half the show lately has been two Black folks who've been trying to, get our writing published and stuff like that. And so we've had these conversations within the group, and I'm going to turn it over to Brent to kind of talk about how the idea came along and kind of what we want to do with this show. But Brent, this is kind of cool. It's just us, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, I know. I miss Will and Nick, so I hope they don't feel bad.
Oh,
but,
sure. Whatever.
I like that, we're kind of getting this time to just be the two of us. So the whole idea behind doing Just Keep Writing While Black was to kind of showcase Black creators and how our journey tends to be different in the industry and the different hurdles and obstacles and, trials and tribulations that we go through. And I think that's why calling it While Black is such a cool title, because typically While Black is something we say in a negative connotation. It's like driving while black, walking while black. Mm-hmm. And, writing while black, I think is a brilliant statement because unfortunately for a lot of us, this thing that we love can sometimes be a negative thing. But it can also be a joyous thing. And that was one of the things I wanted to kind of bring to this when me, Marshall, and Will and Nick first talked about it, was just kind of giving Black authors space to talk about these things and bringing Black authors in at all stages of their careers. Because before the show started, I was kind of telling Nia that it seems like, unfortunately, no one wants to talk to Black authors until we've actually made it, until we're actually successful and we're in the industry and we've already survived all of those things that get thrown at us. And they don't want to talk to us along the way. So I wanted to kind of rebuke that a little bit and make space for, Black authors at all stages. So that was kind of the idea. And I wanted Nia to be the first person just because we've known each other for a few years now. And I gotta tell you, Nia is one of the most persistent writers I have ever met. There has been so much thrown at her that a lot of other people would have been I'm done. I'm sick of this. I'm walking away. And Nia has persisted time and time and time again. And yeah, it's just been such an example for me. And, something I definitely tried to emulate. So I was Nia's got to be first. Absolutely.
Over here.
And we're stoked to have you, honestly. And so on that note, since our listeners are probably unfamiliar with you, would you like to tell them a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your journey, what you got going on? And then we'll kind of dive into this, kind of what we've been going through while we're writing. So thank you.
I'm Nia. I'm a writer. I don't think there's ever been a time where I haven't been a writer. There's a story where I could have been no more than 4 or 5. And my grandmother was a teacher. And so I would sit at the table with her and she'd be this was old school days where teachers would have to write out their lesson plans, right? So there's a story my family loves to tell that I would sit at the table with her and I couldn't actually write letters then. So I was scribbling out scratch, and my grandmother would be what are you writing? And I would have a whole story just that I would start spewing out from start to finish, and I would tell the same story every time she asked. So fast forward 34 years, and here I am. Science fiction fantasy is my jam. I can't imagine or I can't dream of really adoring writing in another genre more than that. It's just really fucking cool to be able to play with like immortality and gods and monsters, and vampires when I can get away with it, because they go in and out of trend. But as soon as they back, I'm so there on that one too. But that's me in a nutshell. My favorite thing to write about is really badass Black girls who like to stab first and ask all the questions later.
Love it.
My book coming out is called The Praetorian Trials. It comes out in April 2022 with Harper Voyager, and it features a badass Black girl who she stabs first with blood spikes, because she has blood magic, and she asks questions later, and it's just fun to really dig deep and explore justifiably just being fucking pissed at a world that throws all the shit at you while you're Black. And building a character where like she can literally throw all the shit back at the world, and come out on top.
I love it. I want to read that book so bad. And I think you kind of touched on something there. And so this I'm going to talk about that in a second, but I think this topic we're going to kind of this week or this episode talk about kind of what did you say? Query to deal, kind of somewhere in between there. So, but before we get to that, I want to go back to something that you just said. Like, it's nice to be able to throw something back, right? Mm-hmm. As a Black writer, for me, I have been living in mostly white communities, and part of the impetus of this show too was the fact that I don't have a Black community really around me, right? And I've got to know Brent, and he's like one of my favorite people. You are also one of my favorite people now, Nia, by the way. And I really wanted to kind of expand a little bit and talk to people that are going through some of the things that I've been going through. So when we talk about throwing things back, or we talk about dealing with some of the things that we have dealt with as Black writers, if we're going to keep it around querying to deal, what is something, and I know Brent, you have experience in this too. Can you guys talk a little bit about what are things that we deal with, that we would have to deal with, that other folks wouldn't have to deal with, I guess, is a nice way of saying that. I think we all know who the other folks are, right?
Right.
Right? Okay.
One thing that really pisses me off is that there's this pressure on us to tell a struggle narrative, or to, tell a narrative rooted in pain or trauma. And I mean, you can't really write about Blackness without touching on that a little bit. But I don't think we get the freedom that other people get to just tell a cool fucking story, whether it be about stab happy girls or about, I don't know, fucking court intrigue, or like fucking Frodo going to like, get the ring to Mordor or whatever. Like, we don't get to just really drill down into fantasy and just write for the love of the genre, I feel like, and for the love of the adventure. Publishing, it feels like they're always looking for, okay, but where's the slavery? Or okay, but where's the Black Lives Matter? Or okay, but where's the Black kid who gets shot in the street? And I mean, those are all important topics that we definitely need to like delve into and explore through lit. But also, I know myself and tons of friends, we also just want to have, I say the joyous Black stories, and it's funny I say that because I mean my girl is literally like stabbing, like leaving a trail of bodies behind. But
that's fun.
Yeah, it is fun, right? Just the joy of telling those tried and true fantasy stories where you have your main character who doesn't really. I mean, she deals with racism and she deals with sexism, but that's not the core of the story. It's just having the freedom to tell a story where you're just having fun with those fantasy tropes, and not always having to lug around the pain that we live through in everyday life.
Right. Sometimes I just want to ride a dragon. Why can't I ride a dragon? Like, why is that such a problem? And I think Nia hits on a good point too. Is like, I think part of the reason they want our pain and our struggle and everything is that deep down they know what they've done. And so they know if what had been done to us was done to them, they would be walking around miserable every damn day. So it's impossible for them to connect with us having joy and connect with us rejecting that experience, because they know good and well if it was the opposite, they would not be doing that, you know? So it's like, what? These black people ain't sad and struggling and singing Negro spirituals? Like, oh, wait, this ain't right. And it's like, I just want to ride a dragon. Like, can I ride a dragon? Damn.
Well, and man, and I love that you guys are saying that, because I feel the same way. Like, I've loved fantasy since I can remember. I love dragons, are like my favorite thing. I wrote a fantasy novel. It's trunked, obviously, right now, but it's one of those things where there are stuff there, and like you said, Nia, there are some of that in the periphery. And in any fantasy, you have racism, and you're dealing with stuff like that, especially if you're dealing with multiple races and hierarchies and all that kind of stuff. But well, we can also write stories that are fun as hell, and someone can ride a freaking dragon and stab people in the face and smile about it and have a good time, right? I mean, I don't know. I love that you guys want to write what I'm writing. It's so fun. Anyway,
well, it was beautiful. That I think that's why, like, among many reasons, me and Nia connected. Like, we like violent shit, and it was like. And it was like, and we have fun with it, and it doesn't have to be about blackness. Well, it is about blackness, but not about black pain. It's just about, we exist. We can exist without, like,
right,
the way you want to see us. Like, we don't have to filter ourselves through you. And I mean, I know Nia can speak to this, but it is a struggle when you're querying to get past that. Sometimes you really gotta, and I think this is something that, like, Black writers querying have to think about a lot more than perhaps white writers, is that we have to be very careful with who we query. We have to, like, do, I feel like we have to do so much more research before we even launch our manuscript into the world, just because we gotta trust that, okay, will this person at least be okay with seeing a black person on the dragon, you know?
Right.
And I mean, look, we saw it happen last week. There was an agent that was pretty much what he was known for. He wanted the struggle. He wanted the struggle narrative. That's what he looked for. And if you weren't giving him the struggle narrative, he traumatized so many young black writers by just ghosting them. So, you know, that's what we're up against. And
yeah,
I think that's rough, right? And it's like, you got to have that community and that fellowship to walk you through those struggles. I know Nia, another thing too, Nia opened my eyes to this, so I may let her explain it. But I was dealing with the voice issue, right? Like, oh, I just didn't connect to the voice, or the character seems to not really, have too competent or whatever. And Nia gave me some really good advice on that. So I don't know, you remember that conversation, Nia?
I think it. I mean, I've said this so many times. I think the time in particular that you're talking about is white writers or white editors, authors, publishing professionals, agents. They tend to filter their stories that they're reading through their experience. And, like, I feel like us as black writers and black people, we grow up and live through, like, this struggle and this pain. And so when we write our characters, we're always writing characters. If this is the time you're talking about. We're always writing characters. Well, where sometimes the agency and the triumph is in just simply fucking existing, and just being happy in the middle of all the bullshit. And so you'll have characters where you write like that, and you'll get these white publishing pros who are like, I can't connect with the voice, or they don't have agency, or the struggle, isn't enough. And I'm like, no, it's because as white individuals, y'all don't live with our pain. So, y'all are used to, being, not necessarily handed everything, but you're used to enjoying a certain level of privilege, to where you can, like, if, I don't know, your main character is in this super oppressive situation, you can mouth off, or you can automatically, like, fly off at the handle.
Right.
And, they call that agency, but sometimes, the fight to exist and the fight to live isn't simply, like, figuring out a way to just navigate through, like, the story world and just live. And not we can't all the time, like, immediately, like, take down a bad guy, or, like,
right.
act. In real life, we can't do that because we end up shouting on the news and, oh, they had a gun. We really didn't. And so I just think that's one thing that us as black writers, we maybe put into our narratives and our story and our characters. And white publishing doesn't seem to get that all of the time.
No, they don't. Like, I think of all the time, and this is not in any way besmirching YAs. I don't want people to think that, but you have these characters, these white girl characters who can have mental breakdowns in public and cut up in public and talk to people any kind of way. And I'm like, and to publishing, oh, that's agency. She's making choices, but it's like, as a Black person, let me have a mental breakdown in public. I'm liable to get shot, and it's my fault. And and then that's what we grow up with. And what Nia was kind of saying, I guess, to kind of like give y'all more details. I have a character, like, I like competent characters. I like characters who don't fall apart at the first struggle, right? Like, and Nia was kind of explaining to me, and she opened my eyes to it. It's like, well, that's how most Black people live. Like, we can't fall apart. Like, we don't have the option of falling apart. And so it filters through our stories, but, white publishing doesn't connect with that because they don't necessarily have those issues.
And on that note, in my community and things, I'm a teacher myself, and I'm the only Black teacher in my district. I'm on a committee with a bunch of white folks trying to figure out something about the name of my town that's named after a Confederate general. And I have these conversations all the time, right? But what's interesting is what you just said, Brent. If I get mad, or if I flew off the handle, I didn't fly off the handle, but I got angry the other day talking to somebody about an issue about some of the profile pictures that the students have on campus in virtual learning right now, because they are literally anti-Black Lives Matter symbols, period. Wow. But it's not in the dress code. It's not something that's blatant. But if I get mad about it and I say something, then immediately I'm the angry Black guy. Of course I'm mad about that. I'm too sensitive. And it's like, if we're writing Black characters, right? If the characters we're writing are Black, they will have, and even if they're having adventures, there is still going to be that, depending on the society you're writing, I guess, but there's still going to be those things that come along with just being Black. And like you were saying, Nia, just existing, just being, right? So it's frustrating to try to, if I were to have a mental breakdown or get mad, then it's like, oh, Black dude's mad again. Shocking, right? And it's like, it's immediately kind of a dismissal. And it's a really a frustration in a lot of aspects of my life, for sure. So
yeah, and I think that also plays into publishing and how, like, Black writers can't get mad in public about things, or when we do, it's like, oh, there they go again. It's never
mob.
right. It's like, oh, this the mob. Here they come. And it's like, no, and it's someone actually kind of said this in the Slack I'm in, and I was like, it's so true. It's like, by the time we're yelling, we have already tried to be gentle with you multiple times.
So many times.
Yeah. And it's like, by the time you done pissed us off, we've went through 5 different steps. And I'm sure for Nia, it's even worse because Black women, automatically, you guys are angry and any emotion. It's like, it's the Black woman. Here she comes. Well, so, okay, not to, I don't want to get off too far on the tangent because I know we can talk about this all night.
But here we are.
Yeah. So, one of the major reasons too I wanted to bring Nia on, like, so I'm not going to speak for your journey for you, but I know you queried a book and then you got an agent with that book, and then you went on submission with that book. So you kind of want to like fill us in on how that went, or because there's a reason. Why I'm bringing this up. You know why I'm bringing this up.
Okay, so the book I queried my agent with and went on submission with the first time is not Praetorian Trials. It's not the book that I'm debuting with. It was a YA fantasy. It was a Hades and Persephone retelling. I think it's fucking amazing. It had
I can see Brent's face. It's amazing.
It had none of the struggle narrative. It was dark. It was gritty. I mean, I really, really loved it. It had like this vicious, like mother figure who was literally trying to kill her kids. It was great.
Sounds amazing.
Basically like murdered the king of hell and took over. It was awesome. But lacked, like I said, none of the trauma, I feel like. And so my agent, Katie Flum, she's awesome, and she saw the vision, and she signed me, and we went on submission with it. But Brent can tell you, I got rejection after rejection that was like, that was glowing and complimentary of the writing itself or the story itself, but was, we don't have space for this, or this won't stand out in a crowded market, or it won't stand out within the other stories that are on our list, which we all know, I mean, you learn, and that's code for, we already have our one. Or this is a Black story, but it's not, weighed down in like the struggle, and we don't assign value or like weight to your non-struggle narratives. So I'm like, okay, so we can have, like Brent said, not to knock YA. I love YA. I write YA. But we can have a million fucking white girls, that's just having, that standard fantasy story where they are the underdog and they fight the magical big bad, and then they come out on top and get their happily ever after. But the minute, I try to give you a Black girl fantasy story that's a contemporary fantasy, with demons and fae and low-key vampires that I just put in disguise.
I like that. I like that.
Right? Because I'm gonna get away with it if you allow me to get away.
I think you might like vampires, Nia. I support you.
I do. But yeah, so the minute we try to, just have a Black girl fantasy story that's, a traditional contemporary fantasy and not rooted in, the trauma or struggle, I got all these rejections that was just like, there's no space. This is not going to stand out. And it's really unfair, and it pisses you off because it's like right behind that you see all these brand new acquisitions, right? Of the same stories over and over again, that's literally dealing with or like employing all of the tropes that your story is employing. But because it's a Black girl, it's not enough. It's not different enough. It has to be something, another element to make it appealing. So long story short, it was called The Dark and Shadow Destiny. It did not sell. We ended up shelving it. And I already had Praetorian Trials wrote. And so I went into revisions for Praetorian Trials. And we subbed it with the strategy of writing it as like a crossover novel. So we subbed it to both editors on the adult and the YA side. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but we did.
It'll be all right.
Okay, we subbed them. We subbed it on both sides. And Harper Voyager, David Pomerico over there is the awesome editor that picked it up, and he saw the vision that it's not just, I mean, yes, like I said, she deals with racism, she deals with sexism. The literally first chapter is her having a bar fight where she like breaks somebody's ribs and smashes their nose in because they, call her that world's equivalent of the N-word. And she's fuck you and fuck this, and she goes off and beats his ass, which she should, right?
Yeah.
But he saw past the fact that it wasn't just about that. It's really this huge story about a girl who has fucking cool blood magic that she has to hide. I'm not well versed on what I can say and cannot say because of spoilers, so I'll try to keep it like on the sparse end, but she has to hide it for a really cool reason. And more than, the struggle that she deals with, the story is really about, at the start, she finds out that these fuckers killed her grandfather, and she's like, I want them dead. I want all of their fucking heads. And so she throws her bid in to train and become like one of these elite soldiers of her republic so that she can earn the rank to basically slaughter all of the racist fuckers who conspired.
I love everything about what you said.
It's so good. It's so
I love
good.
everything that you just said, Nia. I swear. I'm just like, can I read this now? Or why don't I have this yet?
See, I've had the privilege of, at least in the most current, I haven't read the most current form, but I had the privilege of reading both of those. And yes. Like, and it pisses me off that unfortunately Nia had to go through so much just to get this deal, because like she said, like there's so many books that always get announced that are talking about the exact same thing. And I mean, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, but I would put up just about any unagented Black author against some of these agented white authors, and I guarantee the Black authors probably, because see, this is the thing, we have to, our craft before we even query has to be excellent. It has to be banged on, because again, and I think it's that disconnect, like they don't want to take the time to groom us up the way that they will a white author. Like we need to come in and be the next hot thing. Like we're not supposed to be something that they have to work on.
It needs work. So, yeah, I hear you.
I mean, I can tell you. Go ahead.
Hey, go ahead, Nia. No, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I can't tell you how many times it has driven me fucking nuts that you hear these stories about these white authors who they get an agent or they get a deal and then they like revise like 90% of the book, like they rip it apart and have to revise it. But then we're told, oh, your book has to be like query ready or submission ready, whatever the fuck that means, if you're still having to rip it apart. And but I just feel like we're held to a higher standard. So, you know, they nitpick about, oh, the pacing might be a little bit off, or oh, this arc needs to be pulled through, or oh, we need to like you know rearrange some of the plot elements. And it's like, okay, I understand that, but also where is the bar here? If, like I said, you hear these stories about these non-Black writers who are getting deals and they're tearing the book apart anyways. I've heard very limited, if no, stories about Black writers.
Oh yeah, no, like and not just deals, but like big deals, like 6-figure deals.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I was floored. I went to this one book, so I'm not going to say the person's name because I don't want them to feel called out. But this person was 23, and they got a 6-figure deal. And I read the book. Not bad writing. It was not bad, but it wasn't a damn thing special about that book to deserve 6 figures. And I was just like, and I thought about writers like Nia and other writers that we mutually know. And I'm just like, they're all fucking better than this. And some of them are still struggling to find an agent. I'm like, this makes no damn sense. And I think too, just to, you know, not to throw all our ages out there, but there's a reason that Black authors, I think you see a lot of us will debut in our 30s versus them debuting in their 20s. And I think that's a huge part of it.
And I have a question about that too, as a man who may or may not be in his 40s. What do you think is we know what kind of the issue is that we're talking around, but as far as the agents go, is there something there? Like, I guess what I'm trying to get to, because we've kind of covered a number of things here, but what can change to help it not take us so long, right? Is it not enough agents out there that are willing to take us on? I mean, I don't know enough about the industry like you guys do to kind of see what but as far as agents go, like I know a few agents. And it's like, you know, recently, especially after last summer, you know, a lot of calls for Black authors and, you know, Black queries and stuff like that. But it's like, that's a fairly recent thing. So up until now, has it just been something that's very easy to dismiss because we're going to tear it apart anyway, like you were saying, or what? Like, is it at the agent level? Like, what do we got to do to help our community? You know what I mean?
I'll let you run that one first, Nia.
Okay, throw me under the bus first. Wow, that's a tough one, but it's a question that I have asked myself so much over this journey from querying to deal, because I queried maybe like it had to have been like over 100 agents, and I only got an offer from one, and. I mean, like I said, she legitimately put in the work. Like, A Dark and Shadowed Destiny was by no means perfect when I queried her. To the point where she gave me edits back, and I was like, why the hell did you sign this? But I appreciate it because I feel like I was given the same opportunity that our, white counterparts are given in that sense. To where she saw the larger vision and the larger talent and potential, and worked with me to really rip it apart and get it in a place where it needed to be. And I feel like we need more agents who are willing to recognize that Black stories have power, and that Black stories, like, just throw that bullshit notion that they're not marketable, or that they can't sell just out the window, because that's not true at all. So more agents who are willing to recognize that. I think more agents who can think through their biases, because a lot of the times it may not even be something that's malicious or that's being intentionally done, but it's that I can't connect with the voice, or this character didn't have enough agency, or the structure or the pacing was like off. And the question becomes, what standard are you comparing this against? Because I bitch about this all the time. So when you say you can't connect with the voice as a white person, how could you possibly connect with my voice? So that literally should be a non-existent reason to reject the manuscript, in my opinion, because you couldn't even fathom. So it's not like, can you connect with the voice? But my thing is, you should be asking yourself, can I step outside my own identity for 2 seconds, and really more objectively evaluate this manuscript? Is a good story being told? Because you're not going to connect with the voice if I'm writing about my lived experience and you don't even come close to living it.
If they haven't lived it, they can't connect on that.
Yeah.
So it's about this. At that point, it's the story, it's the writing, it's yeah.
And I think it's also realizing that there's more than one way to tell a story. A lot of the time, publishing kind of like judges you by the Western hero's journey structure, and that's culturally, that's not how all of us will tell a story. Even if it's something that we as Black writers are unintentionally doing, we come from a tradition of like oral histories, and maybe not so linear narratives, and we definitely have our own cadences and rhythms, and like even like moods and styles and tones that may be different than what I don't want to say derivative, but the traditional expectations are. It's just recognizing that culturally my story may look different than like my white counterpart story, but that doesn't mean my story is like worse in craft or has less of a value.
Yeah, like I love that Nia like harps on about that though, because I'm in absolute agreement. It's like, how could you connect without voice? Like, what you should be asking is this a good story? Does this person have that craft right? Because it just seems, I don't know, it seems very like hypocritical to me to be like, oh, I welcome diverse voices. Yes, please query me. I want you in my inbox, and then you hit them with that. Like it's such a mind fuck for a lot of Black writers, I think, when we query, because a lot of these people do a very good job of lip service and saying that, especially after last summer, that, I want Black voices, Black people query me, Black people hit me up. Do you know the amount of like Black writers that like never heard back from some of these agents, or got ghosted by these agents, or like,
I bet.
or like just got standard form responses? Like, my thing is like, if, and I think too, this is one of the things I think about a lot, is that I think a big part of the reason that, a lot of Black authors, we debut later in life, is because most of us are working class. Like, we don't have the privilege of having someone take care of us, or have someone pay our bills, or somebody we can fall back on. We have to work and write. We have to have kids and write. We have to like take care of our families and write. And it's like, and just saying that is like, makes me so impressed with Black writers even more now, because we do all that and we still excel. Like that's the crazy part. But I think definitely I need the industry as a whole to grasp that reality and understand that, like, y'all gonna have to start meeting some of these Black writers where they're at, and stop asking them to meet you where you are. And also too, just like marketable. What the hell is that? Like they barely tap into the black market. Like the fact that I've never seen a book ad run in an Ebony magazine, or I've never seen like a book ad, like I don't know, that they've never tried to like hit up a black media outlet. Like I never see that. Like I never see that, and it blows my mind. So I just feel like before they talk about marketability, it's like, are you actually even trying? Like I don't even feel like you're even giving any effort to it. So
and I like what you said, Brent, too, about as far as, you know, seeing where we're at. I think is really important. And I've worked multiple jobs my whole life and managed to just try to write when I can. And you know, like I said, I'm in my 40s and I'm like, oh, cool. I might have finished a second book soon. And it's like, that's a big deal. The fact that I've done what I've done, considering what I'm doing. Right. But as far as marketability and stuff goes too, like what is the, stop making it about them, I think is what needs to happen. Like there's a filter that is turning on. And I find this in these conversations I'm having about race and stuff, especially after last summer and some of the things that I've written since then. It's like, how is it about you? Right? Like I'm telling this story, like somehow it comes back to being about them. And it's infuriating. It's like, I'm telling you a story. And they're like, well, I've never dealt with racism. And I was like, or I've never seen racism in this town. It's like, no shit.
Yeah, of course.
The streets around the corner from me are named after your family.
Yeah.
You're a white dude who's lived here your whole life. Of course not. But
yeah, of course that aside, seen it.
But that's what I'm saying. Of course you haven't seen it. But understand that the stories we are telling are real, and that should be enough, right?
Right.
And it's really interesting how quickly that turns. And I think that's why, like you were saying before, you know, you were getting ghosted and all these other things are happening. It's like, oh, that's not what I thought I was going to get, you know, and now I feel bad about myself and what I'm dealing with because of these stories coming through. And I don't know if that's something to do with it, but I think for sure it's gotta be part of it. Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, me and Nia talked about it. Like how many black authors, when their covers drop, are like, oh my God, finally a black person on the cover. Finally. I mean, you know, we're seeing a lot more of it, but there's no nearly enough. And I like know with Praetorian Charles, I'm like, oh yeah, I can't wait to see Akina with some badass blood daggers on the cover or some shit, you know, because for
I already got an image in my head about it. I love it.
Oh, she's such a cool character. But like for a time, like there was like this idea that like black people on book covers weren't going to sell books, and now all of a sudden it's like we have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get them to understand what we're telling them. And yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that, but yeah, it's just so frustrating.
It is.
I think the even more frustrating thing is now we've come to, and I won't name names, slapping a black character on a book that's not written by a black person. A book.
Yes.
What did I miss?
Oh yes, that happened. Not Mark. Lord Jesus, Marshall. That happened.
But we're supposedly not marketable. Okay.
Yeah, we're supposedly not marketable, but there was an author out there who had a black woman on his cover reveal, and she's not even the main character in the book.
Yeah.
And
getting slapped?
Yeah. It was quite the controversy for a little bit. And for me at least, it was one of those jaw-dropping moments. I was like, I can't believe they did that shit.
Right?
And because it was like, because I know, and especially for black women, I know the shit that black women get about trying to, one, getting themselves on the cover in the first place. But two, even if they're getting themselves on the cover, making sure it's not some Eurocentric whitewashed version of a black woman on the cover. So it's like, for you as a non-black person, I wouldn't even feel comfortable with that as a black man, to be honest. So let alone to be non-black and to do that. And then not even the main character. It was like, it just came off exploitative as hell. And Nia brings up a good point. I'm scared we're at that inflection point now that like all the hard work that the black writers in the trenches have done is now going to be seen as profitable, and other groups are going to swoop in and take advantage of it. And I'm scared we're at that point. But that's a whole nother topic. So
yeah, Oh man, I don't even want to think about that. But yes, that is a whole nother topic for sure. So at this point, is there anything else in your journey to the point to like Nia, in about a year, you have a book coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else along your journey that you felt like that you were running up against? Since we're talking about querying to deal at this point, you got your deal. Were there any other things that you want to tell us that you ran up against that you don't think you would have had to deal with if you weren't Black?
I feel like one thing is worrying and obsessing about needing to get the content out now. And I feel like I shouldn't have to be or feel like I'm in competition with my peers, if that makes sense. So like publishing has a really bad habit of like perpetrating like the Highlanders syndrome, right? So like there can only be one.
Mm-hmm.
Once we have the one, like that's it. Or once we buy this one type of story, there's no room for anything else. So I feel like I always feel like with every new project, I always feel like this sort of rush to like get it done and get it pitched and get it out there, because I'm like, okay, so if I get beat to the punchline, yay, that's great, because I'm always here for like more Black stories and more Black rep. But also then how does that, diminish my story, or will that diminish my story, or will that affect if I can sell it behind that? Or is publishing going to, close the gate and be like, nope, sorry, we already have the one. There's no room for any more.
That's so frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. I just can't believe, as far as how many stories we have that we see on TV, the amount of books in the bookstore, it blows my mind that at some point we've hit capacity on what we can get. You know what I mean? Like there's somebody out there that can consume it. So what are we limiting and why? And I think that putting that into question, I think is important. I think. What about you, Brent? Because I know you run around in other circles as far as, Fiyah Magazine and, editing and stuff like that. So are there things that you've seen that that you can talk about as far as hurdles or barriers?
So, yeah, I mean, like my querying process is sort of just begun. Like I tried to query one book and like I'm not in the process of trying to get ready to query another. And just... at least for me, I think the hardest part is like trying to decipher which criticism is actual criticism that matters versus which criticism is based in race. And I think for anybody for any Black person, we question ourselves like a dozen times before we finally say, nah, this is a racial thing. Like, yeah. And I know popular opinion isn't that we don't do that. Like people think we just automatically assume, oh, it's racism. Like, no, we actually filter it through our heads. I mean, I've asked Nia multiple times, I'm like, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think about what this person said? Like, and it's like, so I think that's, if I was going to give advice to like any Black writers out there about the query, just have friends that can support you in those moments where you're doubting yourself, and that can be honest about you honest to you when, like, if it is a craft issue or if it is a story issue, like, so, because it doing it alone, I promise you, it's hard. Like, it's hard doing it with community. So I would definitely recommend just like, build your mental fortitude up, be prepared for, those issues, those struggles, and just understand that like not every criticism you receive is actually going to be valid and something you need to take action on.
Yeah. And I appreciate you guys talking about this stuff. I mean, honestly, like I'm at a different stage than you guys are. I queried back in the day with my first novel, but I collected a few rejection letters. I've collected several short story rejection letters from various outlets, and I did some Black publications and some not. So it's not only that, but at the same time, like I think it's important that we have these conversations. And part of the impetus of this podcast was creating a community, right? And I like that we're broadening this and having this little, I keep calling it a spinoff because whatever, but the spinoff of the show, because this is the only time I get to sit down and talk about these things with people that are going to be like, well, is it really what you thought? And it's kind of what you were just saying, Brent. It's like, why are you like? It's not that I just immediately go, that was racist. It's like, okay, I've experienced racism enough in my life to know, okay, I run it through the filters, like you said, in your brain. It's like, okay, yes, that was racist. Or I turn to somebody I know, like you said too, and it's like, am I crazy? Or is this racist? And you know, and these are the things that we run up against. And I don't know. I think we should start to wrap up a little bit, but is there anything else on this topic that either of you want to throw out there, or because I'm going to throw it to Nia in a second to talk about her stuff again real quick.
I figured something positive on the
positive
note,
is good. Yeah.
Yeah. Write what you want to write. Like, don't try to write the market. Write and stay true to yourself. Don't let, the pressures of social media or other writers or whatever try to stray you away from your voice and what you really want to do. Like, write what you love, and you will find people who love what you love. Like, that's how me and Nia found each other. So, so just, write what you love.
And just be confident, because I mean, to get this far, you have the skills. So definitely don't let publishing, smash through that confidence, because they only know what they're talking about like 50% of the time. Let's be honest. And the other 50% of the time is all just subjective anyway. So just being able, like Brent said earlier, to weed out the objective, okay, this is something I should work at, and the subjective, I can dismiss that because that's a person's opinion. Yeah,
for sure. You guys are both awesome, and I really appreciate your guys' time tonight to do this. Nia, I'm not gonna let you go before you let people know how they can like follow you on social media, or sign up for a newsletter or something to get to know about this book that I thought might have been coming out in April, but it's like,
I wish
maybe next year.
We have started talking covers, so I get to talk fun cover things soon. I'm on Twitter. It's at Nia_Davenport. I'm on Instagram, Nia.Davenport. My website is nedavenport.com. You can definitely go there to sign up for the newsletter. The book is The Praetorian Trials. It's out April 2022. And you can, if you're a Goodreads person, it's definitely already up on Goodreads for you to add. And actually, I was telling Brent the other day, publication got pushed up to April. At first it was the fall. So we did it early. Woot woot.
Nice.
So hopefully, like I said, good stuff like covers and pre-order links and all of that should definitely be out super, super soon. But like I said, my website is nedavenport.com. There's a newsletter that you can sign up for. And I can keep people up to date on when all of that fun stuff gets off the ground. Yeah.
Awesome. And we will definitely put all that in the show notes. Thank you again, Nia, for being with us. And don't think I can let you go without asking one more question.
Sure.
Because this isn't really technically an interview, but which I appreciate your time. And I'm sorry, it's just gonna be like one more minute. But our show is called Just Keep Writing. So what keeps you writing, Nia?
Wow. Okay. So what keeps me writing? The fact that Brent can tell you, I get like 1 million really cool story ideas a day. Even the times where I've been like, I'm over it, I'm not doing this, it's not worth it, I'm just done, another story idea will literally like ram into me. And it's just that itch and that like, oh my God, like that hunger and that drive, like I have to get this story out. Because when I'm writing it, it's the most fun, entertaining, fulfilling, cool thing in the world. My family can tell you, I will sit there and write over watching TV or like doing something else like for entertainment. Because like I said, you can't get any more fun than, like I said, writing about Black girls who like stab people in the throat. Then go on and ride a dragon or like snatch a whole crown, or a country. So, I'm like, no, this is where the entertainment at. So that's what keeps me writing, just the fun and the thrill of telling the story and live. It's like when you write a story, you get to live like 1,000 different lives within your one finite human life. And it's the most amazing thing in the world.
And I'm no good because every time she tells me an idea, I'm like, yes, write it.
Yes, write
like, yes, write it.
You're like, have you written that yet?
So one little thing, I forgot to mention this earlier. This is actually Nia's very first podcast appearance as a writer. So I am super privileged. Yeah. So I'm super privileged that we got to be your very first podcast appearance. Like that's like, especially once Praetorian blows up, I'm going to be like, well, she was here first. So,
And speaking of that, when that gets closer, we are having you back again. And you've already admitted to that to Will earlier, so you're coming back. We can't wait to have you back. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. And this has been Just Keep Writing, a podcast for writers, by writers, to keep you writing. You can find us at justkeepwriting.org. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Feel free to reach out to any of us on our social medias, and please jump in our Just Keep Writing Discord channel. Links to all of that is in the show notes. Lastly, please support our show by going to patreon.com/justkeepwriting. We offer daily writing prompts, early access to podcast episodes, and much more. Thanks for listening, and just keep writing.